All right, it's time for QB1. And for that, I'm joined by Chris Phillips. Always great to have him here. Let's talk about Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. What do we have going on here in Pittsburgh? Do we have a clear definition of who is the guy?
Yeah, I'm not sure, really. It looked like Mitchell Trubisky was going to be the starter and possibly be the starter for the season. That didn't work out so well once the games got underway. They brought in Kenny Pickett. He did some things. I mean, he threw 3 interceptions in his first game, which isn't good, but Peyton Manning also threw 3 interceptions in his first game, too, and look how he turned out. Now, I'm not saying Kenny Pickett's going to be the next Peyton Manning, but I'm pointing that stat out because rookie players can have a bad debut and they can still go on to be a great player. So I don't think there's really much to take away from Pickett. I do think it is a bit interesting that these two quarterbacks have kind of been a little bit more interchanged than what maybe people were expecting to be the case. And we've also seen, because they've been brought into games, we've seen them kind of spark that offense. So the saying is, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. That might be the case with Pittsburgh right now. I mean, they might have 2 guys that are a little bit better coming off the bench, kind of have an extra fire of going into the game with something to prove. They said, "Oh, you didn't think I was good enough to start. Let me show you." And they go out and kind of light things up and prove that they should be a starter. It is interesting to see how these 2 quarterbacks are playing this season.
We should have used the headline for this QB1. Kenny Pickett is the next Peyton Manning, according to Chris Phillips. Maybe that would drop a little bit of traffic. People would be like, "Huh? What are you talking about?" But
Yep.
that is how the saying goes. That if you don't have a clearly defined starting quarterback, you might be in trouble. I mean, how much cause for concern is there if you're a Pittsburgh fan and you've got 2 guys, but you really don't know what you have? I mean, that doesn't seem like an ideal place to be when so many teams around the league have a clearly identified starter.
Yeah, it's not. And it is a bit surprising that Pittsburgh would do this. They are a pretty smart organization when it comes to drafting, developing players. They aren't ones to necessarily kind of take a risk, not unless they are really confident in their abilities within their scouting department and their coaching staff to coach up a player. So getting Kenny Pickett, I think, was a little bit of just, it's a golden opportunity. He's a hometown kid that was there for them in the first round. And, quarterbacks who get drafted in the first round get that 5th-year option if the team wants to pick it up. So if Pickett does succeed, then they get another cheap year of Kenny Pickett's services. And if he doesn't, then they don't have to pick it up and they can just let him walk. So it is a little bit interesting that Pittsburgh would do that. There are some things in Pickett's game that I think are good enough to win at the NFL level. I don't know how long it will take him to get to that kind of a level. But with that being said, he is a good enough quarterback that I think after this season, he should probably be the starting quarterback over Mitchell Trubisky. I know Trubisky signed a 2-year deal, so technically he still is on the team on the contract for next season. But they could void that contract or trade him or just say, "Hey, you're going to be the second string guy," or whatever. But I think for right now, I think Pickett is probably going to be the starter for the rest of the season unless there's an injury or anything that happens.
Is there a chance they use the draft to bring somebody else into the fold here? I mean, are we going to see another quarterback added to this mix? I know out of the 2, you say Pickett probably has a more likely chance to be the starter next season, but is there a chance that neither of these guys are the starter next season?
Oh, man. I think a lot of it is going to depend on how Pittsburgh ends the season. If they are kind of middle of the pack, somewhere in the draft range in the teens, maybe they go on a quarterback if there's a really talented one that they like that's there for them. I mean, this upcoming draft class is supposed to be a much better quarterback class than last season's was. So we have seen franchises in the past go back-to-back years with quarterbacks, talking about the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray, and it's kind of worked out for them. So, could Pittsburgh do that again if, say, they're in a position to draft a Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or Hendon Hooker? Yeah, I mean, I think all 3 of those guys were probably better than Kenny Pickett was last year or even this year, and so I don't see why they couldn't. It really just depends on how Pittsburgh finishes out the season. They're a team that's always going to play hard, play till the end of the game and never give up. And a lot of that comes from their head coach, Mike Tomlin. And I don't see Pittsburgh just kind of rolling over and folding and saying, that's it, guys. Just let's work on some things. Let's try some things and get ready to go for next season because this season's a wash. So I still give Pickett the slight edge over Trubisky or somebody being drafted. But, man, if Pittsburgh was in a position to get, one of this year's top quarterbacks, I would not be surprised if they went and got somebody that's clearly better than Kenny Pickett.
You mentioned giving Pickett a slight edge in terms of being a starter next season. I mean, when you fundamentally look at both of these quarterbacks, who's better in your opinion?
Right now, I give the slight edge to Trubisky. He just has more experience. We've seen more complex NFL defenses than Pickett has. If you're going by overall athletic ability and skills, I think it's kind of a wash. I think Pickett does some good things, but at the same time, I think Trubisky also does some good things well. I think Trubisky has a little bit stronger arm than Pickett does, but Pickett might be a little bit more accurate on deep passes than Trubisky is. So they kind of end up washing themselves out overall. I would say just the experience would give Trubisky the slight edge over Pickett. But if Pickett is as good as he's shown and how he's shown some of his on-field intelligence, both in college and the pros, I think he could close that gap pretty quickly and make it very, very believable to everybody that he's better than Mitchell Trubisky.
Interesting situation in Pittsburgh. Chris Phillips on QB1. Chris, thanks.